This is all about embodiment and trauma, and how embodiment can help you heal from your trauma, and also things like anxiety, depression. Um, what else would I say? Just any overwhelming feelings and emotions. So we spend a lot of time in our heads and not in our bodies, because that's kind of how we're trained outside of childhood. But I want to just walk through. This is who I am. So you can't see it on Instagram, but I'm Chrissy. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a therapist, recovering people pleaser, and trauma resolver. And I can happily say that I'm a trauma resolver because I have now created a different relationship to trauma. Obviously, no one likes to feel trauma, but it's a part of the human experience. So when we learn to work through our trauma, release, and resolve, we actually become more resilient. So that's why I had to start with my own. Okay, so what is trauma, and do I have it? Trauma is the result of extraordinary stressful events that shatters your sense of self. It makes you feel helpless in a dangerous world. I like to also say it's the moment where you felt like you came out of your body, or you couldn't trust yourself. You couldn't trust your body anymore. So trauma can look different in each person's life. You might say, yeah, I was in a car accident and that was when I really felt like I was traumatized. Or it could just simply be someone telling you that you couldn't trust yourself, or that you, like in school, a lot of kids are bullied. That's a trauma. So when you feel like you're bad or something about you is bad, that can take you out of your body, causing a trauma. So trauma can also leave you feeling numb and disconnected and unable to trust other people or yourself. It can also look like big T trauma or a little t trauma. So big T trauma is things that never should have happened to you, like car accidents, abuse, pandemics. But it can also be little t traumas, are the things that you should have gotten, but you didn't, like proper attunement from a caregiver. So everybody has trauma. So when we ask ourselves, do I have trauma? Yes, every single person has trauma. So let me just give you an example. I would love to be able to share some of mine with you. I put pictures down of my body as a child, motherhood, and marriage have all been traumatizing. I learned very early on in life that my body was not necessarily inherently good. I was raised in a legalistic church, and I was taught at 10 years old that I needed to cover up my body because I was a stumbling block for men. And at 10 years old, I was wearing biker shorts to Awanas, if anybody knows what that means. And a pastor pulled me aside and said, you cannot wear that. And it felt very shameful, and said, if you do, men will look at you and stumble. I didn't even know what stumble meant. And so that for me was a moment, the first moment I can pinpoint when I felt like my body was bad or could be a dangerous thing. And that's when I also learned that men were dangerous, because I couldn't fathom at the time why my legs and my butt were going to be something that would cause someone to do something bad. So that's, in a moment, a trauma. I would call that actually a big T trauma in my life, but some people might say that's a little T trauma if that's how you feel about yours. But really, trauma is what happens to you inside your body as a result of what happens to you outside. So it's really not productive to judge your trauma, because, and we do this, and I'll explain to you how I did this for years. We compare it to everybody else's. So we read stories in the news, or we say, okay, well, I went through the pandemic, but I didn't lose anybody from COVID. Well, that doesn't matter. If you went through the pandemic and your nervous system was really heightened, and you were scared, that means you were traumatized, probably more than somebody else even. There's also been, I've read this story once in the book, I think it was called In an Unspoken Voice, by Peter Levine, which I highly recommend, that one and Chasing the Tiger. Peter Levine's an expert in trauma. And he gave the story of how there was an accident, a school bus accident. And so someone that wasn't trapped in the bus was able to get out and help other people get out. And that person had less PTSD because they were able to move through the trauma and do something with their body as a result. So, this is part of the embodiment practice when it comes to trauma. But yes, all these things. Motherhood was definitely a big trauma for me. My son, my oldest son, when he was about 2 years old, we were visiting the church, the church where I was shamed for wearing biker shorts. We were visiting that church, and he had ran away from me, and I was right behind him, and he turned a corner, and then I turned the corner, and I couldn't find him. So then I started to think like, okay, I got to go look in the parking lot. Looked in the parking lot, couldn't find him. Looked in the other parking lot, couldn't find him. So then I started to freeze. My body froze. I started to panic because I had already had some issues with anxiety and panic disorder. And so I got my parents and everybody that was around to look for him. And since we were visiting, they didn't know him, but someone went out to the front of the church to ask these little boys out there playing if they had seen him. And they said they saw a man take him. So this woman came running back to me in my frozen state and yelled hysterically that they saw a man pick him up and take him. So we called 911, and I literally changed as a human being in that moment. I could literally feel the DNA in me change. It was probably maybe 5-10 minutes that I lived thinking he was kidnapped. But my life changed in that moment. And shortly after that, my mom said, Chrissy, we found him, his feet, like he was underneath the copy room door. So the first time I turned that corner, he had turned the corner, and he had shut the door behind him, and it locks behind him. Yes, my kids are ninjas. And I couldn't walk. I crawled to him and I held him. And I went home that day, and I had no clue how to deal with this complicated trauma. I didn't know it was trauma. It was a funny story at the time because it was like, haha, we got him back. Wow, that was a close call. But it was like, I literally couldn't eat for a couple days. I had a beer that day for lunch because I had nothing else in me. I didn't know how to be in this new skin of mine. And then it was 2 years after that that my PTSD symptoms just escalated. I acquired a fear of flying. I was hypervigilant everywhere. I kept reenacting the trauma. So when we would go to like the park, I wouldn't see him in a tube, and I would reenact the whole trauma inside my body and think that he was taken. And then I started having night terrors, and then I knew I cannot live this way. Like I could literally not recognize myself in the mirror. So I started to get help. I started to do, intensive treatment. I went to this place called Gold Monarch Healing Center, which was the start of my process of healing from this trauma and learning about embodiment as well. It was nonlinear movement that really specifically helped me to learn the roots of my trauma and how they go back even before this really traumatic event, probably the biggest T trauma I've ever had in my life. So yes, that is the story of how my body woke me up and said, no, you're not going to live like this. Let me see. Okay, so this is also what I say. Trauma is the crap that happens to you. It can be a one-time event like the one I just shared, or it can be an ongoing, relentless, stressful environment that you live in, like a crime-ridden neighborhood or battling an illness. It can be experiencing traumatic events that occur repeatedly, like bullying or domestic violence or childhood neglect. And all this is a commonly overlooked cause of trauma, but even like things like surgeries or procedures that you have to have, they can be traumatizing, even though you know that it's something good for you, because your body doesn't necessarily know the difference. All your body knows is this is threatening to me, or this doesn't feel good. You can also be traumatized by the death of someone close to you, the breakup of a significant relationship, or a humiliating event. So those are all different forms of trauma. So what happens in your body when you're traumatized is that your body goes into the sympathetic nervous system. We have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is what we usually are all in right now, rest and digest. If someone were to come in here threatening, we would go into the parasympathetic, which is fight, flight, or freeze. So you're literally your prefrontal cortex goes offline in those events, and you don't need to rest and digest, you run. So everything in your body prepares you for that running event. The thing that happens to us though in the society is that threatening event or that tiger can literally be an email or a text message or an Instagram post now, because we are infiltrated with things that traumatize us and trigger those wounds. So that is why we need to become more trauma informed as a society so that we can work this out through our bodies. Animals naturally do this. So can't see this on Instagram, but I have a picture of a tiger chasing a gazelle or a deer, whatever that is. And animals do this often where they're almost caught and killed, but they're not, and they play dead. And so the predator runs away because they don't want to eat something that's dead. Then the animal is still breathing, but is not moving. But when the predator's gone, the animal will literally start shaking. And this is called immobilization, which gets you out of the freeze response. So animals do it instinctively so that they go back to grazing the next hour, day, whatever it is. And they dispel the energy from that near-death experience. So this is what I love to teach in my nonlinear movement and my embodiment courses and one-on-ones is, what is your own immobility response? How do you get out of that? So it's almost like the gas and the brake are on at the same time. That feeling when it's like all that energy is revving through your body when you are triggered by anxiety or stress or trauma. So I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I see a cop behind me or I hear the siren go off, immediately my adrenaline will go like, oh my gosh, am I in trouble? Am I going to get a ticket? And now I hate that feeling of when that happens, but I have no control over it, right? So what I do is I literally will and I will shake it out. Not too long. I keep my hands on the wheel, but I will literally do something that helps me release that energy out of my body because I don't want to hold that in. That is how we get traumatized and have frozen patterns of trauma in our body. If we don't move it out, we will then store it in our fascia, which is the connective tissue from your muscles and your bones. So what is embodiment and where does it belong with trauma? Embodiment is literally just coming back to your body. It's the process of being fully alive in your body, and it is the full human experience. We are all meant to live embodied. So most of us don't really live inside our bodies, I said earlier, because we live in our minds. We are told that, okay, well, you can mind over matter, right? We say mind over matter all the time. Well, really, it's not. It's matter over the mind, because the body will always win. The body does not lie. So you can maybe stuff that stress or stuff that trauma for a period of time until the body will have some sort of reaction. For me, it was panic disorder and PTSD symptoms. For others, it's disease. Gabor Mate is also one of my favorite researchers and doctors that talk about trauma and how it manifests in our body through disease. Statistically, African American women have a higher rate of asthma than anyone else. And as racism goes up, so does asthma in that particular population. So we can see correlation with disease and trauma. The great thing is we weren't born to do this, right? We weren't born to have mind over matter. We were born to live in our bodies. So go back to childhood and think about it. How did you experience your body before the world got a hold of you? You ran, you cried when you were hungry. You demanded attention because you were worthy of it, and you still are. You naturally integrated your mind and your body and your spirit. So you played when you wanted to play. You ate when you wanted to eat, and you didn't feel bad for those things because you knew you were worthy of it. But at some point, the world gets a hold of us. So ask yourself today, this is one of your journal prompts if you want, how do you experience your body today? How to reset. This is definitely a key factor in embodiment, is you have to do something with your body. I've had a couple clients before, or not Christmas, before summer started that were really anxious about being in a bathing suit. And they had kids. So I said, okay, what are you doing when you're anxious? Well, I'm sitting in the chair at the beach and I'm just looking at my body and I'm feeling bad. And I said, you need to get up and move. Go walk on the beach, as counterintuitive to what your anxiety is saying that is, right? You need to move. You need to move and play again. So spending time in nature and movement is so key to resetting your nervous system and becoming embodied. So practice meditation. That's another good one. Get a massage. Do abdominal breathing from the diaphragm. Literally put your hand on your chest and one on your diaphragm and try to make both of these move. So this goes up with the inhale. Hold it at the top. Breathe out for 6. And as you breathe out, you try to make the abdominal hand move. And that's how you know you're really breathing into your abdomen and using your entire breath. So, literally coming back to the breath is probably one of the easiest ways to reset and to become embodied. Repetitive prayer can also work, focusing on a word that makes you feel calm and peaceful. That was actually something that helped me with a lot of my panic triggers. Was I would practice calming myself down and I would associate it with a certain word of how my body felt when I was calm. So my word was heavy. My body, when I'm anxious, feels up, like I'm going up and out of my body. And that's a scary feeling for me. So feeling heavy and grounded felt very safe. So coming up with a word and doing breath work with that to help you feel grounded is a very good way to reset. Playing with your kids and animals, also a good way. Practicing yoga, Qigong or Tai Chi is another good way. And I'm going to add nonlinear movement. I don't have it on my slide. I don't know why, but that's why. This is the pathway through. You can't resist it. I've talked about this before, that it's like a Chinese finger trap. If you put your fingers in a Chinese finger trap and you pull against it, this is what we usually do, right? Is we don't want to feel it. We want to numb out. That might work for a minute. It doesn't work forever. So you have to go into it to get out of it. So going through it and using grounding techniques, such as meridian tapping points, that's also another good way to reset. You can look up Donna Eden's daily energy routine. I love her energy routine using the meridian tapping points. You can go into the shower and just mindfully notice, where does the shower hit me? How do I label those parts of my body as coming back to my body? That's another good way. Diaphragmatic breathing, I just said. There's great meditation apps. My favorite breathwork app is just literally called Breathwork. And when I was triggered by panic or anxiety, literally that was all that would help. I didn't want to hear words. So this is just literally a circle that breathes and shows you how to breathe, goes in and out. So I love that one. And then what I teach, nonlinear movement, was it's almost like a movie meditation. I don't have to tell my body what to do. I actually get to listen to my body and give her a voice, because Lord knows for years she did not have one. So that is what I teach in my coaching programs. And our ability to heal. If you guys get anything out of this today, is that your body has the ability to heal, because your body has an inherent wisdom. We're not taught that much. But when I went through my embodiment training, that was one of the things that stuck out to me the most, that was so hopeful, was that my body has an inherent ability to heal. And my body has always wanted me to heal. And so I changed my relationship around anxiety and trauma as a way of like, wow, like it's a messenger. Every time I had a panic attack, it was a message that something is what I need. I needed to look at something in my life or my body. What was I doing too much? Do I need to address this thing that keeps happening to me, that keeps triggering the panic? So yeah, for me, it was a huge gift towards my healing. So yeah, trauma resolved is a gift that builds resilience. And as a result, we can live more embodied and integrate our mind, our body, and our soul. In shamanic tradition, they call this soul retrieval, which is one of the best gifts that I've ever given myself, and the best gifts I've seen other people get through healing. So ask yourself today, what's happening in my body today? What memories come up when I get quiet in my mind and I listen? What sensations have been happening lately in my body? What do I feel? And then what do I want to move out? If I could move something out of my body, what would I want to move out? And you can. So these are the first steps to healing. The first step is always acknowledgement and acceptance. Like I said, not pulling against it, but embracing it and saying, yes, it's here. And this is for my healing. This is for me to become the person that I want to be. And then I put recommendations down. These are some of my favorite trauma recommendations to read about trauma and educate yourself. The Wisdom of Trauma documentary by Gabor Mate. You can literally go to the wisdomoftrauma.org and just put a donation down and then they send it to you. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk is a really good one. Chasing the Tiger by Peter Levine is a little bit more easily digestible. It's not as thick. So I love that one. I have a course called Create Your Calm that can help walk you through feeling these sensations in your body and moving the things out that you want to move out. And then I have an embodied coaching program, and I can do this individually, and I'm also putting the group together. So if you're interested in the group, email me at chrissypowersmft@gmail.com. I'm going to put that down in the chat. But this is radical acceptance, right? This is where it starts, is saying I can accept what is instead of what I want it to be, because once we start doing that, we truly suffer less. So once we can radically accept where we're at in life, instead of pushing against it, we go into it. And that's when we can start healing. So I'm going to stop sharing right now on my screen. And I'm going to allow you guys to have a Q&A moment. I'm going to stop recording. All right. So if any of that resonated with you and you're interested in joining one of my groups or my courses, you can do that one-on-one by yourself. One-on-one by yourself. I have one-on-one coaching available as well. I do have a couple therapy spots available, and I love creating groups, healing groups of people that want to heal from their trauma and anxiety and learn about embodiment. So if you're interested in working with me, either one-on-one or in a group setting or using my course as a self-guided practice, you can do that as well. Just reach out to me and you can find me at chrissypowers.com. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking my Embodiment 101 webinar. I hope that it resonated with you. I hope that you felt seen, and I hope more than anything that you felt hopeful. My absolute favorite thing to do in life is to walk alongside individuals as they come home to themselves, as they learn to love their authentic selves. If this at all resonates with you and you feel like you need someone to help you walk alongside you in that process of healing, I would love to be considered as your coach. I have an embodied women coaching package that is 8 weeks long and very, very gentle and loving as we heal through the process of anxiety, unwanted emotions, and trauma. If you're interested at all, please reach out to me and we can start the healing process together. I would love to be considered as your coach.